Is there anything left to say about Silent Hill? Like, seriously, Silent Hill 1 hasn't aged the greatest, but it's still loved and respected for what it is. Silent Hill 2 is considered to be a masterpiece and the best of the series by, well, pretty much everyone, including myself. Silent Hill 3 is fantastic, but is weaker than Silent Hill 2 in a few ways, but 3 is actually my favorite of the series, mainly because it was my first one. A lot of people dislike Silent Hill 4, but those people are wrong. These four games are the best the Silent Hill series has to offer. The others, they're between meh and just awful. Although Silent Hill is synonymous with the best the horror game genre has to offer, only a few of them are accepted as such. And even then, there's still a debate if the fourth entry is even good. It is good. It's great. Why can't you just leave my baby alone? Besides Silent Hill 4, I thought everyone agreed on the rest of the series, both good and bad. Imagine my surprise that during my search for these games, I saw a lot of people love some of the bad ones, a certain game in particular. Silent Hill Shattered Memories, originally released in 2009 for the Wii, later being ported to the PSP and PS2 in 2010. It's a reimagining of the first Silent Hill game, though same characters but an entirely different story. Once I saw all the love for this game that I thought was pretty bad, I knew I had to talk about it. Prove all of the foolish fools online that they are wrong. The script was already writing itself in my head, so I bought the game and started playing. That's when something unexpected happened. I enjoyed it? Well, kinda. Some of my opinions on this game have not changed at all, but some of them are totally different. I thought I had a pretty solid idea of what this game was, but turns out, nah, not really. So, what do I think of Silent Hill Shattered Memories now? I said earlier that this game was originally released on the Wii and then later ported to the PSP and PS2. And you can tell, so much of this game is interacting with things, and motion controls were the driving force behind this. To the game's credit, it doesn't feel all that bad here. Kinda blah sometimes, but for the most part I don't hate it. It does feel like I may be missing out on some form of immersion though. Instead of moving the Wiimote, I'm just using an analog stick and pressing X. And there's a whole bunch of that. I'll go into more detail, but if you want to sum up how this game plays, well, you've been looking at it the whole time. Walk around, interact with things, solve what could barely be called puzzles, and run away from monsters during chase sequences. Now, that sounds pretty bad, and I thought it was a decade ago. That was my biggest complaint for sure. I still don't love it, but I don't despise it either. Walking around examining a world that feels heavily based in reality but is just slightly off is more unsettling than I had originally thought. At the time, I just wanted another Silent Hill game. I didn't give this game a chance at all, but can you blame me? This is so drastically different from the rest of the series. It was pretty jarring, especially when I had just finished Silent Hill Origins. Say what you will about that game, but it's still pretty faithful to what you've come to expect from a Silent Hill game. While this is a game, at times it feels like the game is happening around you and you're just kinda there, not really contributing more than walking around and touching things with your grubby little hands. I rarely felt that way, to be fair, but I still felt it. So the game essentially breaks up into three different sections: therapy sessions, walking around exploring, and chase sequences. The various puzzles throughout the game are in both the chase sections and the exploration sections, though both are so easy that it feels generous calling them puzzles. Therapy sessions are just point and click things that don't seem like much but do change certain aspects of the game. Well, like, only 3 things. And as far as I can tell, only a couple of these sessions impact the game as a whole. Based on your answers in the first session, the game will already start leaning towards one of a few endings. Those answers, plus staring at a lady calendar and bathroom slander, turns Harry Mason into a massive perv. In a different session, you have a coloring book family home and you just, well, color it in. Right after that, you are walking up to this house with the colors you picked. I have no idea how I did it, but I managed to turn Harry Mason into an alcoholic. Seriously, I'm not sure what I did to cause this, but he sure does love the booze now. This game is very formulaic. First a therapy session, then exploration, and then finally running away from monsters. rinse and repeat. Over and over. And before the pattern really starts to wear on you, the game ends. Oh yeah, it's a short one. I beat the game in one sitting with enough time to record extra footage. Total recording time is around 5 hours and 41 minutes. I missed some stuff for sure, but I did spend a good amount of time exploring, so yeah, pretty short. I don't think it's a bad thing. By the time the game starts to overstay its welcome, it gives it the old "welp" and ends. It's for the best, really. The exploration sections are just that. Walking around, exploring, and puzzles. Again, the term puzzles is a little generous at times. Nothing more to it, and that sounds pretty dull, but it isn't. This was my favorite part. I can't explain why, because you are seeing it. This is it. You're watching it. It's hard to capture a feeling with just footage, but it feels wrong. It feels off. It unsettles me in a way that I find hard to explain. It feels like a man lost in a void, occasionally catching glimpses of the worst parts of the real world. You can take pictures of shadow people, which unlocks a glimpse into that particular moment in time via a voicemail, or interact with certain things, which also gives you a voicemail or picture. Essentially the same effect, but a different way to get it. And these memories are pretty fucked up. Like I said, catching glimpses into the worst parts of reality. Some real traumatic stuff. I'll dive a little deeper into that later on in this video. You can also call any number you see with Harry's cell phone. I love this. I spent a lot of time calling every number I came across just to see what would happen. There are also collectibles, kinda. These mementos can be found throughout all of Silent Hill. Do they do anything? No. Do they mean anything? Kinda. Some of them unnerve me, others are just fun. Look at this little guy. And finally, what I think is the worst part of the game, the chase sequences. This is the worst part of the game. No joke. I originally thought the walking around sections were the worst part because there was no tension, no monsters around any corners, nothing to hurt you, just emptiness. The emptiness now fills me with dread, and I've already explained the uneasiness I feel. So how do these chase sections function? Just run. No, really, that's all you do. You can press X to knock objects over to slow them down and hide in lockers. I actually had no idea you could hide and only found this one locker to hide in. I never saw another spot to hide in, but I'm sure there's more. It doesn't matter much though. You will get through just fine by running. In the last couple of chase sections, they try to mix it up by having you solve a simplistic puzzle to unfreeze a door, or complete tasks to unfreeze a door. Yeah, not a lot of variety here. It's dull, it's boring, and it's simple. If you start taking too much damage, you could pick up and use a flare. The flare keeps the monsters from attacking you, so on top of it being already pretty easy, you were also invincible for a time. Somehow being chased by monsters is more boring than walking around with nothing happening. I have no idea how that's even possible, but it is. There's also a look behind button, which I actually forgot about completely, because I never used it. Except here when I realized I never once used this button, so I gave it a go just for the footage of it. And of course I need to mention the soundtrack. I've talked about this game's atmosphere, but the soundtrack of the game really elevates it. I think when it comes to Silent Hill games, even the bad ones, we can always agree that the soundtracks are pretty good. And this game is no exception. I was listening to the soundtrack the entire time I was editing this video, and it's a vibe, man. Like I said, I really enjoy the atmosphere. It keeps me going. The majority of the game is walking around sections which, although atmospheric and unsettling to me, to most it might be a pretty hard sell if they actually want to, you know, do something? Maybe for some, the monsters chasing you can be tense, I guess? But even if that's the case, there are only 6 of these sections and they are very short. It's hard to defend this game when there's so little to it, and I did get bored with it a few times myself. But even though 2/3 of the game are blah, does the story make up for that?
You're very quiet there, Harry. You're not gonna be sick, are you?
I think I'm losing my mind.
What?
How long have you known me?
If you want to play this game for yourself, I do encourage you to skip to this point in the video to avoid spoilers. There are multiple endings, but the initial twist will always be the same, so skip ahead if you want to avoid the twist being spoiled. Alright, so even after 10 years, Harry Mason still can't drive and crashes his car. And apparently, it messed him up good because we're in therapy now. Our psychologist, Dr. Kaufman, has us fill out a quick little form and we are back to just after the crash. Harry's daughter Cheryl is missing, so we venture out into the blizzard to find her. After a bit of the old Cheryl! We eventually run into Sybil. We got sexy Sybil, so on the right track for a good ending. Don't ask how I know, I just have a good feeling. The crash really messed up our boy because he not only forgot where he lived, but that he has a cell phone as well. So, back the way we came. Before we can make it, however, we get a call from our daughter being all creepy and then the world freezes over. Boy, that's weird. I hope nothing jumps out at me.
Oh shit!
Oh, that's over quick. Okay, so after getting away from the monsters, we are back in the psychologist's office. Kaufman asks a couple of questions and then we get to coloring in this thing. There. It looks great to me. We come back to Harry at his home, which is identical to what we made in that picture, only to find these 2 old fucks in our house. Harry is ready to kick some ass, and so am I. But there's no combat in this game, so Sybil shows up to stop Harry from absolutely destroying this couple. She agrees that something isn't right, so off we go to the police station. Funny thing about driving in a snowstorm, you kinda can't see anything. Although Sybil has been out in this weather the whole time, she somehow forgot how bad the storm is and has to pull over. The second she is out of the car, Harry starts doing what Harry does best, rubbing his hands all over everything until something happens. We finally get out of the car and no sign of Sybil anywhere, and the car is suddenly buried in the snow, so off to the woods. Here we wander around, uncover some pretty messed up stuff, and Harry being as pervy as possible.
No bareback in the great outdoors?
After wandering around calling numbers and listening to voicemails, Sybil finally remembers Harry exists and calls him up. But Harry don't take no shit and continues his search for Cheryl. Eventually we find a shadow child behind a bunch of blood spatter, and then it's another chase section. This is where the first unfreeze the door puzzle is. Listen to this voicemail of a pretty shitty mom complaining about her husband and ignoring her daughter. Then match the sounds of the toy in the voicemail to the toy on the couch. Door unfreezes and you can resume running away from the scary monsters. What a fun time. Now we find ourselves on a football field. Sybil tells us that Cheryl might be in the high school gym. Afterwards, we return back to Dr. Kaufman, who asks us a couple of questions, and then I make my ideal high school schedule. I must be boring as hell because all he wants to do is
talk more about the bad stuff that happened at school,
instead of focusing on my cool schedule. Back to Harry, and we're at the high school. The perfect place for a middle-aged, alcoholic, perverted dad. And because of the snowstorm, Harry is free to put his hands all over everything in the school with reckless abandon, and no one can stop him. Classrooms, lockers, planetariums? Okay, this high school has one hell of a budget. Is this shit normal? I know I went to poor people's school, but planetarium? Sorry, I got sidetracked. Anyway, yeah, lockers, planetariums, taking pictures of cheerleaders. I mean, he can't be stopped. That is until he walked in on a pretty girl singing alone in the gym. I think it's strange and unsettling, but Harry thought it was worth applause. And by applause, I mean exactly 4 claps. You know, Harry is kinda creepy.
That was elegant.
Lacking in finesse, but 10 for effort.
Ah, who am I kidding? This guy is charming as hell. We tell our new friend Michelle about our missing daughter Cheryl, and she claims she went to school with a Cheryl Mason. Look, there's even a picture. She's too old to be our daughter, but Michelle thinks we could dig up some more info in the principal's office. This is an easy enough puzzle. The principal has a few security questions, and there are clues throughout the office that give away the answers. Since I've been walking around pressing my eyeballs against everything this entire time, I already had all the clues at hand.
Shit.
You break it?
Way to go, Harry. Even though the computer is busted, we still learn some things. This grown-up Cheryl and our Cheryl are the same one. Harry is weirded out by how much he has forgotten, but Michelle suggests that we call the number on the file. Only Cheryl doesn't pick up. A woman named Dahlia does. She's pretty upset, but the phone cuts out and we are back to Ice World. Once we get far enough, the door freezes and we get a voicemail. Take some juicy pictures and the door will unfreeze. Not much of a puzzle, just head to these locations on your map, snap a photo, and run back. After the door unfreezes, we walk back outside into the normal world and Michelle. Instead of Michelle asking where Harry disappeared to, or Harry explaining that naked monsters hugged him a lot, they just have a normal conversation like nothing even happened. Michelle offers to give us a lift, and on the way there's some small talk. This is probably one of my favorite moments of the game in a weird way. It's just walking while 2 characters have a casual conversation, but it feels so real. The dialogue feels natural and lighthearted, which makes the setting feel even more unsettling and bizarre. It doesn't last long though, as we arrive at the club Michelle works at. She asks Harry to go upstairs and find the keys for the SUV while she calls her boyfriend. Instead of, not staring right at her and getting the keys, Harry lingers around for a bit before realizing, oh yeah, normal people don't do this. Upstairs we go into her room and touch absolutely everything, but do eventually grab the keys. Michelle proposes a toast and Harry is into it until he isn't. After he calms down, he leaves to go rejoin Michelle, only to find that she has been replaced with that Dahlia lady. Harry is confused at first, but doesn't fight her off. For the first time ever, Harry is telling another human being about all the weird shit going on, and Dahlia doesn't really believe it. Apparently, Harry has been weird before. But before we could get too deep in the conversation, Harry has to go and figure out how to lower the bridge, because normal people can just do that. And another first, calling the random number is actually super useful. After solving the puzzle with the help of the number we called, Harry gets back in the car, but oh no, everything froze and the car was plunged into the river? A lake, maybe? Some body of water. Dahlia is frozen solid and Harry is touching everything to try to escape, which he does, and we find ourselves right back in the therapist's office. He has us play a strange game of sleeping or dead. Not sure if this is the normal treatment, but he got the fancy office somehow. He probably knows what he's doing.
Actually, they were all dead.
That's messed up, man. Harry finally comes to and finds himself in a wheelchair being pushed by Sybil. Before she can reveal what she found on our file, everything freezes over and we're in another chase sequence. After completing another puzzle to unfreeze a door, we find ourselves in a normal version of the hospital. Well, as normal as a crashed ambulance and a nurse with a head wound could be. So we follow her to her apartment, and Lisa's her name by the way, is clearly having problems with her head. She asks for green pills, and we hook her up. Oh hey, it's the therapist again. After completing another one of his weird games, we are right back with Harry in Lisa's apartment. So off we go to find our daughter. But before making any real progress, Lisa calls us freaking out. Weird thing though, she never gave us her number. We rush over, but it's too late. Lisa dies in front of us.
Said don't move. Stand up and step away from the girl.
This is awkward. Thankfully, the world is frozen over again and saves us from going to jail. Monsters, freezing door, puzzle, and normal world. Woo. We wander around the mall, solve some puzzles, listen to movie trailers, and oh, fuck. Hey there. This is actually creepy. After that experience, we finally arrive at Cheryl's address only to find an aged Dahlia. Time has not been kind to her, but she tells us Cheryl might be at the lighthouse. Everything freezes again, and instead of being chased by monsters, we get something different. Something cool. Something trippy, and I loved every second of it. After all that, we are in Cheryl's room. Where do you think we end up next? Therapy, of course. Harry wakes up to find Michelle, and she offers another ride since the last one went so well. John and Michelle get into a fight, Harry wanders off into the cold, ends up in the sewers, and then right back with Michelle. She explains that her and John broke up, but we don't have time for her problems. Only thing we care about is booze, babes, and Cheryl. In that order. Be quiet, therapist man, I'm tired of your games. After exploring an amusement park, we find a boat and a once again young Dahlia. She offers to drive us out to the lighthouse, but first, Harry does what Harry does best. Hands all over everything. Fun is over pretty quick, however, because Harry wakes up to an old frozen Dahlia and everything else frozen. Running time it is. Dahlia calls and tries to stop us, but that isn't going to work. Harry Mason never stops running. Oh, well, never mind then. Sybil saves us again though and doesn't want to stop us, but she also drops a bombshell.
Hell, I believe you are Harry Mason. But Harry Mason was killed in a car crash 18 years ago.
Yeah, Harry Mason has been dead this entire time, and all the answers are at the lighthouse. Except the lighthouse is a clinic, and Dr. Kaufman is the therapist here. Speaking of Dr. Kaufman, speak up! That's real professionalism right there. That's right, we are Cheryl Mason. The Harry Mason we know and love is just a thing Cheryl created from the trauma of losing her father, and other traumatic events. From here, there are 4 different endings. First time I played this, I got the best dad ever ending. This time I got drunk, not so great dad ending. And that actually bummed me out. I really wanted to give closure to Cheryl. You may be thinking, why is that? How can you form a connection with a character that wasn't really present in the game? Sure, we spent the entire game looking for her, and here she be, but what do we even know about her besides losing Harry? Well, we actually know everything about her.
Lived so long. We have phrases like the honeymoon is over to remind us how quickly marriage is sour. You think I'm being sick?
In order to truly understand this game, we need to talk about some very sensitive subjects. I will try to be as vague as possible, but with some things, it's impossible. Go to this time code if you want to skip ahead, but understand that without discussing the traumatic events of this game, you will miss what makes this game so impactful and beautiful in a way. Okay, here we go. While discussing the plot, I purposely avoided talking about the voicemails and text you receive. I mentioned the mechanic earlier in this video, but I didn't want to say anything more until this section of the video. The voicemails you receive by either interacting with static or taking pictures of static are Cheryl Mason's memories. Your discovery of them are those memories being brought to light during the therapy session with Dr. Kaufman. So even though I've told you the plot beat by beat, the memories you slowly uncover are what truly gives the story impact. Even if you watch this video in its entirety, you could still play it yourself and feel that impact. As funny as it was to turn Harry Mason into a perverted drunk, I also created the traumatic events that would lead Cheryl down a path of self-destruction. This was the realization that changed my opinion of this game. I watched the credits scroll by and felt a strange depression, an impact that was completely unexpected, because none of the other games had left me feeling quite as strange. Silent Hill is known for its symbolism, monsters reflecting a person's desires or the environment reflecting an individual themselves. Silent Hill 2 doesn't need to say what the bed monster represents. It's pretty clear, just never said out loud. Shattered Memories doesn't do that. It just says it. It shows it. And it's honestly uncomfortable in its realism. While exploring the woods, Harry comes across a cabin. This text message appears on your phone, and the attachment is a picture of Cheryl, drugged up, naked, and lying in the snow. You know what happened to her. The text says everything. No symbolism. It's there for everyone to see. Remember that clip of Harry being a weird pervert? I showed that intentionally, because that text message changes the context of what we are seeing. Harry being pervy, haha funny, until you start thinking, is this where it happened? While at the high school, you get several voicemails of men trying to force women into sex. One in this parked car where she is repeatedly saying no, one in this diner where a man is calling his girlfriend frigid, and another where he's calling her his perfect little schoolgirl because she has pigtails. They are all disgusting, but the schoolgirl line just grosses me out. The chase section, where the puzzle is to take pictures to unfreeze a door, you are taking pictures of Cheryl in the teacher's car, naked in the shower, and this one where she is with her teacher in a pretty compromising position. This is still a common occurrence of teachers taking advantage of troubled students and sleeping with them. So Cheryl's early teenage years are filled with sexual assault, extreme bullying, a dead father, and a teacher sexually abusing her. How did she get started down this path? Cheryl's the only child of Harry and Dahlia Mason. While Cheryl is still fairly young, her parents can barely stand each other and the marriage is rapidly falling apart. Dahlia and Harry were high school lovers who, of course, thought they would be together forever. To cope with everything, Harry turns to alcohol, and Dahlia treats Cheryl like an annoyance. There's a moment in the tunnel of love where you could hear how done she is with everything, but starts to feel a tiny spark of what she felt before, until Cheryl wanders into the tunnel, causing the ride to get shut down, and is upset with herself for ruining everything. Before they get to Cheryl, Dahlia openly expresses how everything is ruined. Harry comforts their daughter and makes her feel better, leaving Dahlia to return to her cold, emotionless state. And I'm not framing Dahlia as the bad guy here. Harry comes home drunk and berates his daughter and wife. Frustrated with his own life, he takes his anger out on both of them. Before anything can change, when everything is at its worst, Harry dies in a car crash. Cheryl never got the closure she needed and created a version of her father that didn't exist, built out of bits and pieces of halfway decent memories. A child in a broken home, a nightmare high school experience, and the only people you feel you can turn to taking advantage of that vulnerability. I have an oddly deep connection with Cheryl's character because I have experienced many of the same traumatic events she has. I don't feel the need to dive into my own personal trauma. I think that statement alone is enough. I think at its core, Shattered Memories is about healing. Confronting the monsters of your past and not letting them control your future, taking the steps needed to better your mental health and live your life. And although I feel like I failed in giving Cheryl the necessary closure she needed, it's heavily implied that she has started the slow process of moving on. During the credits, we also get the notes from Dr. Kaufman after the session. Our version of Cheryl will continue to visit and will make progress. There is hope. A brighter future. There are other outcomes. I won't spoil them, but they could be better or worse than what I got. No matter what you get though, it ends the same way. Cheryl packing up her toys and memories into a box. The very same mementos you've been finding and collecting belong to Cheryl. Each one tells a story, and each one captures a feeling. I mean, seriously, just look at this little guy. Cheryl's story hits me where I live, and her journey towards healing fills me with hope. Harry was just a vehicle which was used to experience the world through her, Cheryl's experiences, her trauma, and her shattered memories. Silent Hill Shattered Memories is a weird game for me. I wasn't expecting to feel this much while playing it. The story and the way it was presented I think is wonderful, and as I said before, I do enjoy walking around and exploring. As unsettling as the walking around segments can be, knowing that there is nothing around the corner to pop out at you kinda deflates the tension. The puzzles are so simplistic they might as well not be there at all. Like, it's Silent Hill, so there should be puzzles. People would complain if they weren't there, and I get that. But, I don't know, maybe like, try? That may sound mean, but I feel like I'm lying when I call these puzzles. And the chase sections are just boring, plain and simple. They're not challenging or enjoyable in any way, just really, really boring. I'm torn here. I don't think this game is fantastic or even great, but I'd put it above another kind of okay title like Silent Hill Origins. I'm just not really sure where I'd rate it. But at the same time, the story told through Cheryl is a pretty moving and impactful one. It left an impression on me, much like Silent Hills 2 through 4. But those other games have so much more to them, and it makes Shattered Memories just feel really weak. It's an interesting addition to the series. This game resonated with me, but it really is a quick, boring, and uninteresting game for the most part. I enjoyed my time with it though. If you could get a copy easy enough, I'd recommend a single playthrough just to experience it. Cheryl's experiences, Cheryl's story, and the trauma of Silent Hill Shattered Memories will definitely stick with me. Everything else, that will fade away. Not really worth remembering at all.
So, like... Oh, no. Oh, what the hell? That was a little weird. So, like, this is pretty much... Like, at first, when I first played this was like, oh, shit, this is pretty creepy. You know? And then I realized, oh, this is the only time that anything really comes after you. So, I became way less afraid.